everyone, I'm Kevin, otherwise known as Forum BX257, here to review another vintage G.I. Joe toy review. And today I'll be taking a look at the G.I. Joe Assault Copter, the 1983 Dragonfly with its pilot Wild Bill. The Dragonfly XH-1 is loosely based on the AH-1 Cobra, an assault helicopter used by the U.S. Army and Marines, and despite its age, is still actually in use. So the Dragonfly is also quite recognizable still to this day. The Dragonfly's mold was reused in 1988 for the Tiger Force subline Tiger Fly, which is also a very popular variant of the Dragonfly, as well as being reissued in 2000 as the G.I. Joe Locust, done in a tan color. Again, very popular. The Dragonfly was well over 18 inches long, meaning that it was larger than the medium-sized vehicles that retailed for around $10. So this would have retailed for maybe about $15 back in 1983, and when it was issued in 1984 and 1985 as well. I'll just take Wild Bill out of the way here. The winglets housed the missiles. These were sometimes known as Dragonfire rockets, but also known as Sidewinder high explosive missiles. There were one on each side, and we had two of these skinnier missiles, two on each side, sometimes known as Scorpion missiles and sometimes known as Sidewinder air-to-ground missiles. We also had this side cannon on one of the skids. It's just held in there by a peg on the skid via this arm, as well as this sort of S-wire. On the other side we have the same thing. On the bottom we have a rescue winch hook, which has a rather long rope connected to it, and of course you could deploy it and retract it by the thumb wheel on the bottom. On both sides we have engine covers as well, showing the engine detail. And on this side we have the infamous push activated rotary. You just push this along and the rotor spin. This is unfortunately one of the things that break most often. Also on the ends of the blades we have these little rubber safety tips, which are, well, fairly easy to pop off as well. So you might want to remember, take a look at that if you're trying to find one of these on the aftermarket. The Dragonfly could house two figures in the cockpit, as well as two extra figures on the skids. I don't really know why they keep putting foot pegs on the skids of helicopters. I don't particularly think that's a very good idea. And inside we have your typical Cobra arrangement of a higher back seat and a lower front seat. Now here's one of the contentions that I have with the instructions and even the artwork. It shows Wild Bill in the front seat, which is, to me, supposed to be a gunner's seat, and the back seat is supposed to be the pilot seat. That's not only traditional for the Cobra, but it's actually traditional for most attack helicopters made anytime after the 1950s. So I'm not quite sure why they reversed that. One of the funnier things is the last feature, which I didn't mention here yet, but the last feature here is the chin cannon here. Mine is unfortunately glued in place, so it can't swivel around. But mine is actually the earlier version of this chin cannon. So it means that these can actually move up and down. The Gatling gun and this pointed thing, which is called a grenade launcher, but I've never seen a grenade launcher that has such a pointed little thing on the end of it, but sure, whatever. Later versions actually got rid of that up and down feature. Because of this plate in here, in order to keep the things to be able to do that, they got rid of that and just have it, you know, stuck out straight so that this whole thing is kind of hollow. And one of the things I'll demonstrate here is if you try and put the figure of Wild Bill in there, you see the cockpit doesn't kind of go down all the way because Wild Bill is actually kind of a tall figure. On later versions, because this is hollow, Wild Bill's feet actually go into it more and he sits more flush into his cockpit gear. But I don't believe Wild Bill as a pilot should be sitting in the front in the first place. You can see Wild Bill is actually quite a bit taller. That's because his hat is not removable. So he has that extra height, which of course interferes with the canopy closing. If you reverse it, however, if you put Wild Bill in the back seat, well, what do you know? He sits perfectly there, which is, I think, how this thing was supposed to be designed, but it was kind of mismarketed in that regard. Wild Bill has a lot of symbolism and associations built in with this one figure, more than any other figure that I could really think of. In his file card, his file name is actually William S. Hardy, so he really is named Bill. And Wild Bill is, of course, the nickname for Wild Bill Hickok, who was a Union soldier in the U.S. Civil War, who fought in the Union's cavalry. And as you can see, Wild Bill himself has a blue Union officer's Stetson, as well as favoring what's molded onto his holsters here, single-action Colt revolvers, something which was preferred in the U.S. Civil War. He also has bull's head buckle there, which is very easy to rub off. Another thing I'd like to mention is that the helicopter corps is sometimes known as the Air Cavalry. So I tend to think of Wild Bill as actually more of a thinly veiled parody of Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore in Apocalypse Now. He too associated himself with the Union and wore Stetson just like this. Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind-the-scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then.